Look up the word crazy in the dictionary, and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield, and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up, and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
There's nothing better than discovering talent, and there's nothing better than realizing it's right underneath of your nose, Jeffrey.
Yes.
And we are not the discovery people necessarily.
Not in this instance.
Not in this instance, but we are the very first people probably in the whole world that didn't know who Rebecca Lynn Howard was until just a few
Well, I know
months
who
ago.
she is based on 4 or 5 months ago.
I
but
know.
Up until then, I did, maybe a little longer than that, but up until then, no, I did not know who she was. But I do know a little bit more about her now.
But by the end of this episode, everybody that listens to the Subiquitous podcast is going to feel like, oh, wow, I have to have more of this gal. She is just precious in every way, but at the same time, gifted, talented. And I'm telling you, right now she's working on a new project. And for those of you that don't know Rebecca Lynn Howard, you need to get online and find out about her. First of all, she does have a Facebook page. She's a crossover country pop singer and also a 2-time Grammy Award winner. And Rebecca Lynn is as country and as wonderful and as sweet and as gentle as a Labrador puppy. And I say that in a nice way because you just want to hug her.
Yeah,
She's just a sweetheart.
a Labrador does not come to mind.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
When I think of Rebecca, I think of Rebecca as a great bass player.
Oh, yeah,
and
she's
guitarist,
awesome. Right?
That plays with us almost every week in our church worship band.
And you are gifted to have her. There's no doubt.
We're very fortunate. She does a great job.
Did you know she also collaborated a #1 hit single with Jim Brickman?
Really?
Yeah, called Simple Things. She's going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to say, you're going to love that part.
Yeah.
When you hear this interview, also backing Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, and his band basically has the Loving Mary Band, which on his solo, endeavors. And she's the bassist, and not only that, she sings. So,
and she does do that well, too.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This is a younger generation. She's a couple of generations younger than we are, probably.
But let me also interject something else here, and she'll probably say, but let me interject. Most of what you just said, other than what I discovered about being a bass player, a guitar player, and a singer, most of what you just mentioned, when I really got to meet her back in the spring of this year, I did not know.
No.
Now, some of that is due to my ignorance about certain parts of the music business.
That's okay.
However, having stated that, since I didn't know it, I wasn't going to find it out, or I wouldn't know it from Rebecca.
No, and
from talking to her. She doesn't have that, as we call it, prima donna star mentality about her. She's just a nice person.
So, and so on the Subiquitous podcast, I have made a determination to make household names on my scenario as much as I possibly can to an audience that would have never, probably ever checked out who Rebecca Howard is.
Probably not.
And so it's kind of really cool because our demographic, as I was telling her, believe it or not, we have a lot of men that listen to our podcast, Jeff. It's interesting.
Yes.
And our demographic is a little older, 45 and above. And then we have a few teenagers here and there. We also have 2 brand new countries, Japan and also, what did I tell you today? Nigeria.
You did.
So it's as broad can be, but what I'm grateful for is that giving God an opportunity to use incredible, gifted, talented people and using their gifts in a unique and different way. And that's exactly what we're going to hear today.
And if you don't know who Rebecca is, you will do yourself a favor by finding out and listening to her, and also listening to this interview that's coming up.
Correct.
Real quick, as a matter of fact.
Severely understated you are.
Huh?
Don't you love it, though, when musicians are understated? You've been that way for years. Nobody knows who you are.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
no,
people know who Rebecca is.
Well, no.
Ain't nobody knows who I is.
Well, what I'm saying is you don't walk into the room and say, "Hi, I play piano." You don't do that.
A good friend of mine many years ago, when I was a young person, said to me, great words of wisdom. If you can do something, like play the piano, just sit down and do it. You don't have to tell anybody. They'll know within about 10 seconds whether or not you can do it or not.
Well, I also have this theory, too.
That's always been my approach.
Right. And my theory has always been, especially in the world of music world that we know of, I have a problem, to be honest with you, over the years of people that have forced their way in saying, "Hey, I'm all about this, and I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm this," and then you find out later they're not all that great. I'll be quite frank with you. I know this is it's one of those ubiquitous, honest moments here.
A moment of clarity and transparency.
I will tell you the truth. 9 times out of 10, in fact, maybe 99% of the time, when a musician does not talk about themselves and does not talk about what their accolades are or how many trophies they have on their trophy case or whatever, 9 times out of 10, they're fabulous because they're not worried necessarily about promoting themselves. They've obviously done it, and obviously they're doing great things, and they don't have to advertise themselves. So anyway, all that to say, we've probably it's time for her to talk. I think, and yeah. I'll be back. We'll come back after this interview. But ladies and gentlemen, hold your hats because this is a precious saint of God, and she, my friend, is going places, has gone places, and she's going even more as God directs her musically. So here's Rebecca Lynn Howard. Rebecca Howard, you are not only gifted and talented, but you have such an anointing on your life, and I've known that from the very first minute that I saw you.
Thank you, Sue.
But it goes beyond musicianship, doesn't it?
I feel so. I really do. I grew up in church, and although I learned to play basically every instrument that I know how to play, I started playing it in church and started singing in church. But I feel like, it does go a little deeper than that for me.
Right.
Because I do really love the Lord, and I really try to let Him lead me and direct me and all my decisions, and that's not easy to do when you're a control freak.
No,
like I am.
You are a control freak? I would have never guessed that.
I'm a very laid-back control freak. I've learned to kind of, manage it over the years, but quite the perfectionist. And so I feel like I keep getting put in these scenarios where my perfectionism keeps being tested, and so it humbles me, and I just have to go, okay, I have no pride, I have no shame, I'm just going to do it to serve. I'm here to serve, whatever you need me to do. It may not be perfect, but it's with good intent and the right heart.
And so you obviously have arrived as far as understanding that for once in your life, you realize there's one area in your personality that's going to be continually tested. Do you know how long it takes people to understand that? I mean, it takes usually people don't get into their later life before they realize, oh, that's how God works.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're so young.
Well, yeah, I am. We won't go there. I'll just let everybody pretend like I'm so young. Yeah, I'm young at heart.
I know you are. Give us just a couple of the a little backstory on how you started to play. And you said you play several instruments, and so you just picked them up, or did you take lessons? And
not so much lessons. My cousin used to play piano in our church where I grew up, and I started just like sitting on the piano bench with her and watching her, and I was about 6 years old when she taught me my first song on piano.
6, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I just kind of took it from there and learned a few chords and when I was 7, I started writing songs, to the chords that I knew. And I started playing guitar when I was 10. My mom and my dad, they bought me a little acoustic guitar, and they bought me a little songbook that actually had I don't know what it's called, not tabs, but it's like where it shows you to put your fingers, like it numbers your fingers and shows you the fingering of all the chords.
Right.
And I literally sat back in my room for hours and hours and hours every day going through that book and teaching myself how to play guitar.
So you're 10 years old doing that?
Yeah. I was just
You didn't have YouTube, right?
No.
So you didn't have all those...
This is back in the dinosaur age of books.
Right.
Imagine that.
And so you played in church, and it's ironic because you're still playing in church.
I'm still
However,
playing in church.
there's a big gap in between the 10-year-old and the...
Yes.
Whatever
I am now. I mean, anybody can Google it and find out. It's not a big deal.
But I want to know, and I know the people that listen to the Subiquitous podcast, they want to know the backstories. They know that they can Google you and find out who you are. But give us the progression of you've done studio work, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And your husband is also quite technical.
He is. We're both. We've both been in town. Well, I've been here about 24 years. He's been here 30 plus years.
Wow.
And so we have quite a lot of experience between the two of us. But, I started coming to Nashville when I was about 10, 11 years old. My mom would bring me down, and I would go to little open mic nights and different clubs that would actually let a 10-year-old in with her mom, to sing with the house band or whatever. And so over the years, I would just make relationships with certain individuals, and they would introduce me to other people, and just that networking kind of led me down this road where I met this guy who became my manager, and I got a record deal out of high school. I started touring all over the world, just green as grass and naive as can be, out of a little town in eastern Kentucky in the Appalachian Mountains.
Isn't that something?
So, yeah, it really is. I mean, I feel like I've lived several lives in my lifetime.
You have. Yeah.
It's been neat. It's been really neat. But, I've learned a lot. I guess all in all, I've had maybe like 3 or 4 record deals. I had some hit songs, back in the day.
Can you give us a little hint at a couple of the hit songs?
Yeah, so I had probably my biggest hit as a solo artist was a song called Forgive. And it was a song that I wrote about a friend of mine who was going through a divorce. And we were both very young. I was 19, she was 20. And she was sitting there kind of, telling me all of the story, how everything happened and what she was feeling. And I don't know if you have a lot of friends who are songwriters, but we tend to come across insensitive, but our brains are very different. And when you're talking and you're speaking in song titles, we can't help ourselves.
Oh, all the time.
And it's just like, it's kind of a curse. So I'm sorry to anybody out there who's my friend.
No, it's
if
lovely.
You don't want your life to end up in a song, you just don't need to talk to me.
So if you go out with somebody, you have a little piece of paper. When they said something really cool, you write it down.
Yeah.
And next thing you know,
and I just can't help myself.
No,
I just can't.
I know it.
I'm not even ashamed of it.
It's
at this
okay.
point.
Well, here's the thing: when Jeff and I moved here, which was only 13 years ago, we felt like we finally had been in people, around people that got us.
Yeah.
Because not saying that New Jersey wasn't, surely wasn't the recording hotbed of the world, but where we were from, there were a lot of explanations that we would have to give to other people, like, so what is it you do again for a living?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it ironic here in Rebecca, this town, you do not have to explain to anybody It's almost like, oh, yeah, you're a musician? Oh, yeah. Okay, that's great.
Yep.
Well, when do you go out again? Or,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I do so many different things. Like I said, my start in the music business actually was as a songwriter. I moved here to be an artist and to be a singer, but my songwriting career took off first. So I was 18, 19 years old, like getting songs cut by my idols that I grew up, listening to, all these famous singers that I just dreamt about being one day.
Can you give us any names? Are you allowed?
Yeah. So Trisha Yearwood. I just love her so much.
And she did your song.
And so the irony of it all is I grew up singing Trisha Yearwood songs, and one of the first songs that I sang when I came to Nashville in those little clubs was She's in Love with the Boy.
Okay.
That was Trisha's first big hit. That's the song that kind of exploded her onto the scene. And I would be singing that song and following her career from thereafter. And then when I was about 18 or 19, Trisha and I were on the same label. We were on MCA together. And we were doing a show. It was in Bowling Green, Kentucky, if I remember correctly. And it was at like a kind of like a big warehouse, like a big metal building. And they just had a stage set up with tons and tons of chairs in there, hundreds or maybe even thousands. But we were doing a show for the Anderson Group, and they were the buyers for Walmart.
Oh, wow.
So when you wanted to kind of, get your CD placed in a really good location in the electronic section. Yeah, location.
Yeah.
So they were using this opportunity, the label was, to put me on stage with my label mates who were very famous at the time. Nobody knew who I was.
Right.
I'm this little girl from Kentucky. I've never had anything going on.
Did you
yet.
go by your own name too?
Rebecca Lynn Howard. That's
Rebecca
my stage.
Lynn Howard.
That's my stage name. Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see you in this thing. I should have looked for you.
That's okay. I'm just happy to be your friend.
I don't listen. No, well, we'll get to that. But in the meantime, that's so great.
Yeah. So we were doing this show, and speaking of Trisha Yearwood, they had 4 of us lined up on stage. It was myself, Trisha Yearwood, Gary Allen, and Leanne Womack. And these are all very big country stars. So I'm sitting there, this little girl right out of high school, and I thought I knew everything, right?
We all
everything's getting ready to explode for me in my mind, And I'm sitting right beside a Trisha Yearwood. So it's Trisha, me, Gary, and Leanne in a row. Trisha sings first, I sing second, Gary sings third, Leanne fourth. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time I'm sitting up there, who is the dead man that has put me right after Trisha Yearwood? I can't follow this.
Oh.
She's hit after hit after hit, And I'm singing all these songs that nobody knows, all of these new songs that I'd written, put on my record. Nobody knows. And so I had this one song in particular that was kind of like, you always save your best song for last, give them the gusto at the end.
Yeah.
And when I would do it live and shows and stuff like that, would get standing ovation most of the time. It was like one of those where it really hits the super high notes and you're holding it forever, this grandiose moment. Well, so it's my turn to sing this particular song. It's like my last song. And I sing the song, and everybody leaps up from their chairs, and it's like standing ovation. And I was just so proud, And in that moment, I was like, wow, this is really great. I'm sitting here, these people I have followed their whole careers, and I really look up to. So Trisha, in that moment, she gets on her microphone and she looks over at me and she says into the microphone, I love that song so much. would you mind if I cut that on my next record?
Right in front of everybody. And of course you said, no. Yeah. Let me go home and pray about it.
Yeah. I'm going to seek the Lord on this. Yeah, no, I nearly fell off my stool. So that was a really cool way to find out that you're going to get a Trisha Yearwood cut. So she ended up cutting the record, and she debuted it on the CMA Awards following CMA.
You can't even...
Sue, I was sitting on my bed when she walks out, and it's like, and here, ladies and gentlemen, Trisha Yearwood, right? And she's got this beautiful black, I can just see it now. The camera shot is like at her back, okay, and it's following her as she's walking out stage, and she's got this gorgeous black velvet dress on. It's kind of low cut in the back. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, literally about to have a heart attack. Okay. I didn't think my chest could contain my heart. Like it was beating so hard and so fast.
And how old are you here now?
I'm 19.
Oh, Jesus. Wow.
Yeah. It was amazing. So anyway, that part of my career took off first, like the songwriting bit. And then and so then it was like a couple years later is when Forgive came out, and that was my first big hit, and then that kind of catapulted my career. And then I had a #1 on the AC charts with Jim Brickman, who you probably
Jim Brickman.
You know Jim Brickman.
Oh my goodness.
We had this song called Simple Things together, and I hear it in the grocery store all the time still to this day.
Let me ask, everybody wants to know this question. Hopefully you still get some mailbox money from that.
I still get mailbox money occasionally.
Yay! I want all the good girls to get mailbox. But probably nowhere it used to be. But
it's the best. I know, yeah. Music business has taken such a hit. But, I always try to stay just positive and keep my so many irons in the fire. I don't only do music, but like over the last few years, it's still all kind of music related, but not just singing, not just playing, not just songwriting, but I've done some production, and I really love the artist mentorship that I do. I work with a lot of up and coming artists as well. I teach voice. I do hair and makeup. I do like all the things that teaches them how to be the artist that they want to be, and that's really such a fun aspect of what I've got my my fingers in now.
Let me just say something.
Yeah.
First of all, that is amazing to me, because as you know, as a young artist yourself, you can get easily swept away by the piranhas of the industry, and I mean that in a nice way.
Yeah, nicest way possible.
How wonderful for Rebecca Lynn Howard to help other young people.
Yeah.
That, what do you feel like when you do that? I mean, it must feel like a calling.
It's so fulfilling. It really, really is. And especially when you get, I always call them my students, especially when you get a student who wants it so bad.
Right.
And they work so hard to get to that next level. And when you see them get to that next level, it's like, it's like your kid,
It is.
I don't have kids. I have a stepson, but I've never birthed a child. Yeah. And so this is kind of like my way of sort of, I don't know, carrying on my legacy in a sense. You know what I mean?
Passing it and paying it forward. I love that.
Yeah, it really is fulfilling. I have to say, I get so much joy out of working with these young people.
See, there's so much I didn't know. I knew once we would put this microphone on that we would just want it to go forever. At least I want it to go forever.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just speechless, because where I am now at 66, I know that shocks you.
It does.
No, it doesn't. I am, I'm exactly where you are, where I have found more fulfillment and value in helping other women speakers or women who are on the road like myself that do retreats or want to do events, and that has been such a blessing. So I just commend you greatly for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you think that all on your own, or did somebody just say, "Hey, you need to do this"?
Well, it just honestly, I think it was a God thing. To be totally honest, when we came off of the road, with my band, the Loving Mary Band, which is a whole nother aspect of my career.
Well, let's hear about this here. What is this band?
So the Loving Mary Band, it's a band that my husband and I, along with 2 other couples, we started it back in, I want to say 2012, maybe 13. So we play with Steven Tyler when he's not with Aerosmith. We back Steven Tyler. We've backed other artists. We play a bunch of like corporate gigs in Vegas. We do weddings. We've traveled the world. We just do everything.
Awesome.
It really is such a fun band. We play like all the best like 70s music and dance songs.
My music.
I love it so much. But anyway, just touring the world with Steven and seeing Japan, and we've been all over Europe and all over the, United States and North America. And
so it never occurred to me, I guess, of course, Aerosmith, are they doing anything at all live anymore? They still are?
Well, the past few years they've been doing a residency.
Okay, gotcha.
And so that is actually what prompted this other part of my career. So when we came off of the road with Steven in 2018, we were all just exhausted, the whole band, because we'd been hitting it hard for like 5 or 6 years at that point, just non-stop.
Wow.
And so Steven decided that, Aerosmith, they were going to do a residency in Vegas in 2019. So I was like, okay, so we're going to have some downtime at home.
And then the pandemic.
Then I'm going to, well, at least we had 2019.
Right.
And I had several people that had reached out to me in the past that said, would you ever consider giving voice lessons? And I just never had time to before. And so I thought, well, this is a great time to do this, to really dive in. And of course, I love to mentor young artists and do that whole thing. So I just pretty much started this business, this other part of my business, where I teach voice, I teach performance coaching, I do hair and makeup, I assist on video shoots and photo shoots and just the whole thing. Yes.
Right.
Wow. And did that all through 2019, and it was able to carry me through 2020 because I already had that online business set up, and
that, my friend,
was able to do
is another God thing.
Totally a God thing.
The preparation that we had no idea all of us were going to be affected by that as musicians.
Yes.
And then look what God did for you.
Absolutely.
So if somebody's listening, and I have a broad spectrum of demographic here. Believe it or not, the last analytics that I did on the podcast, Rebecca, you're gonna laugh. 65% of the people that listen are men.
Oh, nice.
It's interesting.
That's surprising, though.
It is surprising, and so when I saw that, I thought, wow. Cool. I mean, most times you would think in the form of a woman who being a host, or developing what I've developed. Most of my life has been women's ministry.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out what it is. I've been a great speaker for men's events, I'll be honest with you, and I laugh about it because they invite me and I go, really?
Yeah.
But I think in terms of what you could have to offer, when I think about the demographic of what I have, and I have several people that are believers and many of them that aren't, there's the wide demographic of international appeal, but everybody knows Steven Tyler. The whole world knows who Steven Tyler is, pretty much. So can you tell me, in a little bit, whatever you're allowed to tell me, do you have any stories about him that would be fun for our audience to hear, or anything about his personality? I mean, I think it's awesome. Here he is. He's hired a anointed, Holy Spirit-filled bass player to play in his rock group. I mean, think about that for a second.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, so there's a man in Loving Mary, a guy in Loving Mary. His name is Marty Fredrickson.
I got to look up Loving Mary. Is there a website?
The Loving Mary Band.
The Loving Mary Band.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look that one up.
So Marty Fredrickson and Steven, they have a long history together. Marty wrote Jaded. He produced a bunch of Aerosmith stuff. And so Marty's in my band. And that's the connection. That's the connection.
Oh,
and so Steven was getting ready to do some stuff
solo
without Aerosmith,
stuff.
some solo stuff.
Yeah.
And he calls Marty and he says, hey, I need a band. And Marty's like, hey, just put a band together.
Well, then there you go.
It's 3 ladies, 3 guys. So it's not like Aerosmith at all, so there's no
comparison.
Not that there would be any competition or whatever. Right. Like there is no comparison to Aerosmith. But I think we bring a really nice element to what he does. Because we do lean a little bit country. Yeah. Just because I'm in the band, and I mean my accent alone is going to countrify anything.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, I was just you don't have to, Sue. It goes without saying.
I love your accent, though. It's wonderful.
Stephen is a gem of a human being.
I have heard that.
He really is, and he is quite spiritual. And his heart is as big as the earth. And when he talks to you, he looks directly into your eyes, and he makes you feel as if you're the only person that matters in that moment.
Oh, my.
And then squirrel.
Yeah. As most of the, let's just face it.
There's an interesting documentary that they filmed on Stephen and the Loving Mary Band. And you can get it on Apple TV, and it's called Out on a Limb.
Out on a Limb. I need to write that down.
Yeah,
okay.
Out on a Limb.
We are going to do that.
And I think, it's really the story of Stephen and finding this band and how happy he is when we're all together and touring, and just the camaraderie, and it's a really wonderful chemistry that we have together. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. See, and then we know that there's such craziness in the world of bands and just music in general, and it's astounding to me that usually, I mean, when I think of Aerosmith, the only thing I think of is Steven Tyler. Anyway, how was he able to? His fan base obviously doesn't have a problem with doing his solo versus being with Aerosmith as well. I mean, he can do both.
Yeah, I mean, the crowds. It was a bit of a different show. So Stephen, a few years ago, he did a country album.
Okay.
And that's kind of where we came into the picture.
I see. Okay.
And it really made sense because he had an experience where he went to the Bluebird Cafe, and so he saw the songwriter round, and it just blew his mind. And he was so intrigued by this whole country thing. And he grew up listening to the Everly Brothers and, country music that was leaning with the country harmonies and that sort of thing. So it wasn't foreign to him, He had a deep love for it and respect for it. So when he did this country record, it really made sense then for our band to join with him. And we actually played on... I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 songs on the record, but, we brought that same element on the road, and it was a really cool set, and just the vibe of the whole thing. It was really quite astounding to see. And there are bits of that tour sprinkled throughout that documentary.
Okay.
So you can kind of see all that. Yeah.
I'll promote this again, too, but it's called...
Out on a Limb.
Out on a Limb, the documentary about the Loving Mary Band and Steven Tyler and the very famous Rebecca Lynn Howard. You're famous to me, and now you're even more famous. But you know what? Before we close today, I really want to talk about something that enabled us to meet. Here you are with the credentials you have. You could be doing anything in the world, and on Sunday afternoons. We find ourselves together at our own church, Regeneration Nashville. How did this happen? Did you just start coming, or did somebody invite you to our church, or what happened?
I started coming, I think it was like back last October, so it's been almost a year.
And we were still in the old building.
Still in the old building.
Yeah.
And I would just come and kind of sort of sit in the middle of the warehouse, like middle ways back, middle ways in, right in the center,
right
where the pole came down through
where the obstructed view. That was we call those the cheap seats.
I'd sit right in front of the pole, and I was coming there for about 2 months, maybe, or 3 months, and then John Michael, the drummer,
right?
I guess he recognized me. And he came up from behind me and he goes, "How long do you think you're going to be able to sit here without anybody knowing who you are?"
I love John Michael Brady. How long are you going to be able to hide?
Yeah. How long do you think you're going to be able to hide here? Yeah. So I think it was either that day or maybe the next week. I spoke to him and Jasmine, and they asked me if I'd like to be part.
What a great.
Yeah. I love playing music so much, and to play in church is a whole different thing.
Right.
It really is, because I do have a heart of worship. I really do, and it is a little bit different, like, when you're in the congregation and you can just be there and you're like enveloped in the worship, and that's awesome. But there's something really special about being on the front lines of the worship that is enabling those people to be able to have that experience and to be filled. And so it all goes back to, it is far greater to give than it is to receive.
Yeah,
right?
It sure is.
And so I've always had a heart to serve, and I always try to do, if I can, what's asked of me, if I'm, capable.
And you can't hide anymore.
And I can't hide anymore.
The thing is, and then once people, you started playing the guitar, I think, first before bass, right?
Yeah, and honestly,
in our worship team, I should say. And Jeff Duffield, can I tell you this? Jeff Duffield is your biggest fan.
Oh, Jeff.
He literally, I'm serious. He's like, you know what? She reads charts that he writes and the arrangements, and you're just like right there because you're brilliant, first of all. But
I feel like I'm hanging on.
No.
White knuckle grip.
And what I love, and we're going to close with this. What I love more than anything, though, Rebecca, is that you nailed it. What good is it to be a musician just doing a gig? This is not what we do on Sundays here.
Right.
It's almost like everything. I mean, we have very famous people that attend our church.
Yep.
Household names.
Yep.
Yet when you see them worship God, nothing around them, it doesn't matter how many gold records they had,
awards
or whatever. And I think the same thing for you, that that particular time you are helping, and you're a leader. You're a worship leader, even from the bass guitar.
Thank you.
And
I certainly do enjoy it, and I think that God delights in that.
He does.
He
does.
And it's definitely not a show. I'm not doing it for show. I love to dance and celebrate and have a good time. And
I wish I'm going to tell the cameraman, they need to put you on camera. No, because I can see from over here, I'm trying to bend around trying to see from the choir, and I'm going, look at her go, girl.
I'm bopping like Paul McCartney.
And the cameraman never goes to you.
That's okay.
I'm putting in a good word this week.
Then I can't get by with my little to no makeup.
I know, but you look wonderful. Well, I'll tell you what, this Ubiquitous podcast has just gone up another notch as far as I'm concerned, having you. And this isn't the last time.
Yeah, we have more to talk about.
No, they need to look up a couple of things. First of all, do you have a website that they can...
The best place to look me up is on socials, on Facebook and Instagram.
Good.
Rebecca Lynn Howard. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
I do have a website, but it's really not.
Okay.
I haven't done a good job.
They can find you. But your social media. Are you on Instagram too?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook all the time.
Right. Okay.
So I keep everyone updated with all things on there.
And the documentary they need, and I'm going to go home tomorrow and I'm going to watch this documentary. I cannot wait. Out on a limb.
Yeah, it's really good.
I cannot wait to see that. And something tells me that maybe in a hotel room somewhere when I was dead on my feet, that I may have seen portions of it and didn't realize what I was watching.
You may have, because it's been on Netflix. It's been on Prime and all the streaming.
Okay.
I don't know how that works exactly. If they have a exclusive license with one or
I don't know
whatever.
But
That's great. You could have run into it.
I'm going to find it. Thank you, Rebecca. You are awesome, and what I love more than anything. And listen, musicians are a dime a dozen. We know that, and especially in this town.
Yeah.
When people are willing to sell their soul to anything, you've sold your life, your heart, your musicianship, and your anointing to the Holy Spirit. I love it.
I do too.
I love you, Rebecca.
I love you too, Sue.
That's Rebecca Lynn Howard. You can find her on Facebook, Rebecca Lynn, Lynn, Rebecca Lynn Howard. And her new album in the works right now on Pump House Records. I cannot wait till this comes out. The Subiquitous Podcast brought to you each week by our wonderful donors and our fabulous patrons on Patreon.com. You can do that today. Get on Patreon, Patreon, Patreon.com/Sue Duffield to become part of the team as we interview some of the greats in music, some of the greats in nonprofits across the world, and even more so, giving you a glimpse at the personal testimony of people that we would say have a household name. How great is that? Thank you each week for your prayers. Thank you for your constant giving and your loving and your dedication. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. That's the Subiquitous Podcast, and we love you and we care about you. Be sure to also send in your prayer requests if you have a few. We would love to do that and put you on my refrigerator. We'll see you next week.